What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Thoughts of the Week podcast. And today's episode, I'm not going to put any intro today. I just want to kind of get straight to it. You guys know this clown here that you're watching or seeing on the screen right now. All right. You know his name. There's no need to even bring his name up, right? So what I want to get into is I want to play this clip. All right. I'm going to play this clip. For those who will be watching, you can see the clip. And I just want to show you some things some tactics that he tries to use to try to, for some who may not think critically or may not pay attention to things, he'll use these tactics to kind of grab your attention and make you think like, yeah, that is correct. But if you don't be a critical thinker or analytical thinker, and all that really is on the basics of it is questioning, thinking about what somebody said, questioning what they say, or question what you see, question what you read. That's the start of critical thinking, questioning things. So there's no need to make critical thinking such a difficult topic or how to do it. It's simply examining what somebody says, or examining maybe what you read. You might read something in a book, or you might see or hear something, right? And you start having questions. Even if you got to force yourself to come up with questions, do that. But start questioning things, question everything you hear, read, see, etc. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this clip, and each part of that clip, I'm going to break some things down to you. All right. So let's roll that clip.
But see, this is what happens when y'all keep following behind people who, first of all, ain't real journalists.
Okay. He said that people are following people who quote ain't real journalists, right? But he doesn't explain to you what a journalist is right at this moment. Maybe he'll explain it later in the video, maybe not. But what I want to do is show you a general definition or what a journalist actually does. So let me pull that up so you can see what a journalist does. So as you can see right here, a journalist, a person who writes for newspapers, magazines, or news websites, or prepares news to be broadcast. All right. So that is your general definition of what a journalist does. So if you don't write, if you are that type of person who wants to talk about news, if you can prepare news to be broadcasted, and broadcasted can mean through live streaming on the internet, through audio. You can go to podcast listening platforms, right? You can simply take your phone and go on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter and do a live video or a Twitter space, or record a live video on those platforms natively and broadcast news. All right. So he plays on people's mindsets and says, well, you ain't a real journalist, but he never told you or explained the simple basics of what a journalist is, what a journalist does. So now let's continue on with more of this clip.
Former pimps.
Come on. Come on.
Call the roll.
Folk who hide their face. Folk who got bad lace fronts.
Oh.
Folk who ain't never been to journalism school, but they want to call themselves new black media.
Now, Roland, after he said that people aren't real journalists, and I showed you what journalists do, and you can actually be your own independent journalist without having to go to school. But he also mentions that he started doing some name calling, And I'm not going to get into who he might have been talking about. Those who may have watched the video can who know exactly who he might have been referring to. But he also mentions somebody who'd never been to journalism school. And I'm about to show you something here in a minute. But he does the name calling, and then he goes into, well, they never been to journalism school, and they want to call themselves New Black Media. Well, the reason why he mentions the journalism school again is to make people, for those who might not question, because remember I said critical thinking is simply questioning things, questioning what you hear a person say, what you might read, what you might watch. All right. You're questioning things that you see, you read, you see somebody say on a video, or you hear something by way of audio. All right. Those things are what is called critical thinking, or the basics of critical thinking. So he mentions the journalism school and he mentions New Black Media. Well, the reason why he mentions New Black Media, we'll get into the journalism here in a sec, is because, the New Black Media is because there are several people, including myself, who we call ourselves the New Black Media, which means for those who don't know, the old Black Media are the Roland types. He's Roland Martin's one of those. What's the other dude's name? I forget his name. Tom Joyner. And those types of people. Those are the people that and even people of today. You got the Joy Reids out there. At one time you had Simone Sanders. I think she's supposed to have some show, or maybe she don't have it anymore. And a lot of these other type of black folks that's gonna give you news and skew it in such a way that if you don't use questioning, you don't question what they say and think about and think and question the things they say, you'll just get tricked and fall for the okie doke, right? Where the New Black Media will take all the news that's going on, and they also, with New Black Media, they deal with black people, the stuff that the mainstream news is really not going to tell you, and the old Black Media, who's going to skew and fix things in a way and not give you the facts of things, not going to really break stuff down to you, just like I said Roland Martin didn't do when he talked about journalists. He just said what people ain't, but didn't explain to you what the basics of a journalist is. And I just broke that down to you. All right. So that's why he's talking about the New Black Media. He's jealous because a lot of people in the New Black Media are gaining more traction than he is. All right. So now let's look at the journalism piece of this thing. All right. So let's pull something up real quick on journalism. Okay. So when you look at journalism, it looks like it has just about the same things as the word journalist. All right. So let's break it down. Let's read this. Journalism, the activity, or it could be the activity or profession of writing for newspapers. So you can just do the activity of writing for a newspaper. You can be an independent person, just never went to school on journalism, but you like to write things for newspapers and you feel you got a knack for it. So you go do it. You writing for newspapers, or you might start your own professional newspaper journalism business. So the activity or profession of writing for newspapers, magazines, or news websites, or preparing news to be broadcast. Almost the same exact word for word. When it comes to the word journalist, you have journalism. And so when you have those words, or it can be one of those or the other, or it can be a combination of those things. All right. It can be any one of those things. So if you haven't gone to school and taken up journalism, but maybe you read some books, maybe you read some articles and you say, oh man, I think I want to get into this. And instead of going to school, you just want to take a deep dive and do it on your own and learn some things that way. You sure can be a journalist and you can do journalism, because at that last part of the meaning of journalism is preparing news to be broadcast. So you can go look up news stories, and then you can jot down notes. All right. Maybe you can take the article and read it and then sum it up in your own words. And then you can go live and do a news show. All right. Something that basic. All right. So he breaks down. He started off with they don't go to school. They're not a real journalist. They ain't going to school for journalism. But I'm showing you here that you can be an independent journalist. Never go to school. Now, that's not the throwdown, the throwaway, not going to school. Maybe once you get into it independently on your own, you might feel like, oh, let me go take a journalism class. And maybe some things you'll notice when you take the class or go to school for it, you might say, oh, I was already doing this already. And then you might find some things that you might not have known. And then you can add that to your arsenal. Another way you can do it is simply ask around. You can ask journalists some questions and get some information on journalism and add that to your arsenal of knowledge, right? So what he's trying to do is do a tactic to make people feel, to number one, say certain people who are the new black media, specifically the people he was calling names about. He was saying, no, they ain't real journalists. They ain't go to school before. They ain't go to school for being a journalist. They haven't gone to school to be for journalism. But you see on the screen the meaning of journalism. So you could take any parts of those and apply it. Again, I look at the last sentence because a lot of people might do this independently. They know how to prepare a news story. Some people might actually find out about a news story and something that's going on in real time and make their way down to that specific location and do some live streaming news right on the spot. You can do that. All right. Even without having to go to school. That's not to downplay those who went to school for it. I'm just saying you can still do it even without having to go to school. All right. So don't let nobody don't let nobody make you feel bad because you didn't take a journalism class, went to school for journalism, that you can't go out here and still make it happen and do better than the people that's in school. A lot of times, even when it comes to millionaires and billionaires, a lot of them didn't finish school either, but they making way more money than these other clowns. There's some people that only made it through high school and they are millionaires today. And these people who are going to school for all these years thinking that's where they're going to get that money because of that, and they ain't make it past $100,000, where somebody who hadn't gone to school is making millions. So don't let nobody make you feel bad. If you want to find out any type of information, you can research that. Excuse me. Because that's something else he mentioned about research, that don't know how to do research, if I'm not mistaken. I hope I'm not ahead of myself here in the video. But he mentions about they don't know how to do research. Research is looking up and gathering information. I'll pull that up too as well. All right. So let's move on.
This is what happens when you are real black-owned media. When you got journalistic credentials. When you know how to research. When you know how to lay things out.
All right. Let's break it down. All right. He mentioned 4 different things we're going to look at. He mentioned he's the real black-owned media. He said when you got journalistic credentials. He mentioned when you know how to do research. And lastly, he said when you know how to lay things out. All right. Let's break them down one by one. Real black-owned media. He's insinuating like he's the only guy who has a media company, and we don't really know if he really has a media company. But you can start a media company. With all the technology and the way things are going today, you can start your own media company from scratch, practically with nothing. You can get out there and just start doing, like I said, live stream videos. I gave you the word journalist and journalism. You can start gathering, looking up news stories, and then reading them, jotting down notes. Maybe if you do something like that, some people can do things from the top of their head, remember things, and they can go on live, talk about a news story. Sometimes you might want to gather video clips so you can show that to further give the people watching you some more details regarding a story. So in essence, you are a media company to start out. Now, you might want to put links to maybe a book you wrote as far as kind of gathering money. You might want to put a link to your Cash App. Maybe people will support you and for you doing your journalistic duties, as the word he used, journalistic, if I'm not mistaken, when he said when you got journalistic credentials. So you can be your own independent company. So again, it seems like there's a jealousy thing with him. And so he's trying to push out what he has and what he does in hopes that you feel like, man, there's no way I can do it. And to the people who don't care about even doing that type of work, if they don't question what he says and think on what he says, they'll go along with the saying, yeah, that's right. You ain't got your own media. You don't have no journalism degree, or you ain't going to school for journalism. Not that he even said he had a journalism degree. He just said they didn't go to school for journalism. And we don't know if he went to school for journalism, to be honest with you. But that's just something he threw out there, right? So that's one thing. Now, when it comes to having journalistic credentials, that's kind of weird for him to say, but that's another way of throwing people off the scent and off his scent of him being his journalistic journey is whack, is boo-boo on a stick. So that's another way for him to just kind of throw you off. And if you don't think and you don't question, again, I keep saying those two things, then you're just going to go along for his okie doke that he always throws and spews out to people. Because you can go on and be an independent journalist, never going to school, but you start learning things as you go. All right. You can learn things as you go, and you can still do research on journalism and journalists and get more information for yourself and still continue to do things independently. You can actually discover things on the fly as you do things, where you'll get the real experience in real time, as maybe a student in school may not get that same in real time experience. They may get it later, but you might have it in an earlier time, even for you not going to school. All right. And you can start building credentials. All right. He also put when you know how to do research. Well, with that being said, let's pull up what the word research means. All right. Let's pull that up. All right. So let's take a look at what it says about research. All right. The systematic investigation into and study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. I'll read that again. The systematic investigation into and study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. Now, that's a noun. Now, the verb is investigate systematically. All right. So let's take a look at that real quick. The systematic investigation into and study of materials and sources. So in other words, you can go ask somebody, a person, about a particular event. Let's say something happened 10 minutes away from you. And you say, oh man, I'm gonna go and check out, get some information about that so I can do a news story on it. And so you go around, you start maybe knocking on doors, introducing yourself, telling people who you are. My name is such and such. I have an independent show, and maybe you can talk to them and show them that you have a YouTube channel or whatever, what have you. Maybe even get them to subscribe to your channel, and then ask them some questions, because they might feel a little bit more comfortable with a person who's independent as opposed to a somebody who's in a company, a person that works for a company, all right, corporate. And so they might be a little bit more comfortable in talking to you. But you're going out and you are investigating, you're studying materials, which can be a person talking. You can also look up articles about it, about a particular story. You can also, check out other sources, people. You might find audio on a particular news story. You might find articles, and you're going to put it all together. You're going to read it, listen to it, take notes of a person or record them, and get the information, and then sit back, come back home, and then listen to it, look through the articles, and look through everything so that you can establish the facts of a particular thing. All right. And so that's all in a nutshell what researching is. So again, he's using these ways and these things to kind of throw people off. And if you might have been a person who was watching him and was thinking about doing it yourself, you'll be feeling like, man, I don't know. He's right. I don't know how to do no research. When the truth is, information is out there. You start with looking up the word research so you can get a definition of it. And then you just break it down. Oh, well, I can go out and investigate. I can go gather information and then determine what's facts from it, or determine if there's anything new to a particular incident or event that took place, right? You can also do that. All right, because it does say to establish facts and reach new conclusions. So you might get some information and you could read articles about a particular news story that might have happened within a couple of days or so. And you might, go to different sources and get that information. And one source might have said one thing, another source might have left something out that the other source didn't. You might find a third source that added even more detailed information than the first two sources. And then you putting it together and you figuring, you pointing out, or you looking into anything new. Oh, this was new. They didn't say this on the news on TV, but they saying it in this article. That's something new. And then you put everything together. You put the pieces together and say, oh, here's the conclusion of it. It's this. And then you can go out and do your story, right? So again, he's trying to throw people off, make them think that they're not worthy of doing anything because of what he said. And again, he's full of ish. You know what I'm saying? And so lastly, we're going to talk about when he said, when you know how to lay things out. Okay, so things out. I'm trying to make it real simple and to the point. I'm not going to go too deep because there's no need to. He's just using these words again to try to throw people off and to make himself look like he's such the journalist and he knows what he's doing. He has it going on, if you will. He's off the chain, if you will. But again, he's the old black booty media. And simply laying things out is just putting things in an outline form, putting things in a chronological order or in a certain sequence. That's it. It's that simple. Doesn't take a lot of schooling to understand that. When you're doing your news story, you're just laying things out in a particular order. All right, that's it. That's as simple as it is, man. So the conclusion to all this, as you see, this is how Roland Martin gets down. He's full of it. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's talking a lot of junk, and he tries to throw people off because there are people who are doing better than him, and they are not on a mainstream news channel. They're doing good by being on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and his whole job is to try to tell people or get people to think that other folks who can be on these social media platforms can't do a journalist job because of them being on the platform. Yet he's on YouTube as well now. And by the way, he didn't do too well when he was on these other news. I think CNN, one of those mainstream news channels, got rid of him. He's gone from News One and a few other things he's been behind that didn't go too well for him. So when he starts talking his junk, ask him about those things. Ask him what happened and see what other stories he gives you. All right? So with that being said, I appreciate y'all, man. This is Thoughts of the Week. We had to debunk the nonsense of Roland Martin. All right? I'm out of here. Peace.